3 News Now this week.
This room full of cars brings back memories for many in Nebraska.
Anytime we head west, you always try to peek through the windows as you're going down the interstate.
After attracting folks from around the country for decades, the Chevy Land Museum closed about 2 years ago. Al Holleritz, whose dad owned the place, said it was just time.
In the early days, there was probably, the attendance was really good. But over time, got into the 90s, the attendance kind of dropped.
A short time later, owner of the museum and everything inside, Monty Holleritz, passed away. Now every car and motorcycle under the roof is up for sale by auction. And so far, they're popular.
People from California, Arizona, really every state I think I've fielded a call from.
Matt Cope works for Big Iron Auctions, the company that is facilitating and managing the auction.
We do sell classic cars quite often, but never on a scale like this.
The cars range from the 1910s all the way to the 60s, with this blue Corvette and red Impala being two that seem to be garnering lots of interest.
The old car market is very hot. There's a lot of collectors, there's a lot of builders that are looking for cars.
Walking around, it's safe to say the cars from over 100 years ago stand out. Mainly because you can barely find them anywhere now, let alone buy them.
General Motors built their cars around wood frames, and for the most part over the years wood would deteriorate and the car would fall in and that would be the end of it. But the cars that were shedded and taken care of, they're just harder to get.
Now all these cars here have some story to tell, but that's especially true for this 1965 Impala. It was used for a deadly bank robbery from 1965 in Big Springs, Nebraska.
And he actually killed some people there. He got caught, he's in prison today. The car was impounded, and then I believe a gentleman from Grand Island ended up buying the car. It's got 13,000 original miles on it. You know, it was preserved.
Al is reopening the museum to show off the cars one last time, starting next week. It's a chance for folks to see what they can buy and to say a final goodbye.
I do think that it'll be a little bit of a walk down memory lane for some folks that really enjoyed this place. And so I know of several people locally that might stop by just to kind of pay their respects and kind of take a look one last time.
And as for how much he's going to get for all the cars, bikes, and even this old fire truck, Al isn't speculating.
When it comes to an auction, you never know. You get two people interested in something and it can go crazy.
In Central Nebraska, John Kipper, 3 News Now.
For the last few months, we have shined a light on the loophole Omaha landlord William Stanx was using to evict tenants despite a federal ban on evictions due to the pandemic.
Now, through that reporting, we've heard from many tenants living in Stanx's apartment complex. 3 News Now reporter Ken Lutzen brings us another tenant story and what she says are the living conditions within the building.
But there are a lot of people that are very questionable. I know there's a lot of drug use, sometimes just right out in the open. This guy came out and started getting in my face, and I had my pepper spray, and so I held it up, like, back off, and he kept going, and I said, "You need to get out of my face, or I'm going to spray you." He kept hitting me, and it didn't slow him down for several seconds. You know, he got several, good hits on me.
In the latest attack, the tenant ended up in the hospital with cuts to the forehead and leg, as well as bruises up their arm. Police records back up the tenant's claims. Omaha police responded to the complex, but were unable to find the suspects involved. This is not the first we've heard of drug use in the hallways of this apartment, as main doors are unlocked and strangers come and go at their own will. Tenants say Stanx does not keep up the living conditions even after complaints have been made to the city. Omaha's chief city housing inspector, Scott Lane, says 9 out of the 12 apartments in Stanx's building currently have an open violation case. The most recent tenant to come forward says they would not be living here if it weren't for the pandemic.
Over last year, both my kids were out of school for a long time. My son has special needs. I wasn't able to get him any kind of child care that was equipped to handle him. So I went from working full time to working just a few hours a week, basically, when his dad had him. And my financial situation took a huge nosedive last year.
The tenant continued to describe the living conditions, adding at one point the toilet did not work and they had to use a bucket. They say mice are everywhere in the building, something we've heard from other tenants we've interviewed as well.
Ken Lutzen reporting. We reached out to Stanx for an interview and we have not heard back.
Omaha's well-known conservative talk show host Chris Baker is out of a job this evening after he posted a tweet last night referencing the verdict in the Derek Chauvin trial. The tweet was deemed offensive and ultimately resulted in Baker's firing from KFAB after working there the last 9 years. 3 News Now reporter Alyssa Curtis is live in front of the radio station with some reaction to the tweet. Hey, Alyssa.
Hey, Maya. Yeah, that tweet that Baker posted was posted just minutes after the verdict in the trial of Derek Chauvin was announced, and we're going to show you guys that tweet right now, but we do want to warn you, you may find it offensive.
Baker tweeted, "Guilty," accompanied with an image of Indigenous people of color dancing. That tweet has since been deleted. In a statement to 3 News Now, iHeartMedia, which owns KFAB, called the tweet unacceptable. Charles Taylor Willey, iHeartMedia's area president, said the post does not represent their viewpoint or their values, and they take this very seriously. They added that Baker's employment has been terminated. Dr. Nikita Imani, a professor of Black Studies at UNO, says Baker's tweet is offensive because of the image he chose. Imani says it shows a trope in which Black people are viewed of as less intelligent and of lower civilization.
And what's really being pushed there is not simply the statement that people of African descent are celebrating the verdict, but also to associate people of African descent with a lower level of civilization.
Very soon after the tweet was posted, many condemned it, including Nebraska Senator John McCollister. McCollister said Baker's post crossed a line.
If we want the Republican Party to be viable again, we must take a stand against hateful messages like this. We all have a responsibility, particularly radio stations, TV stations, the newspaper, to present information in a fair and balanced way. But like I say, I think this particular tweet crossed the line.
The tweet also invoked a national response. CARE, the National Council on American Islamic Relations, released a statement before the announcement of Baker's firing and called for his resignation. They also called for him to meet with leaders to learn from his mistake.
Look, in our society, we condemn each other far too often, right? People make mistakes, but you want to give people a chance to grow and learn from their mistakes.
Now, in a statement to our news partner, the Omaha World-Herald, Baker blamed what happened on accidentally posting the wrong picture, and he said he took it down as soon as he could, and he told the World-Herald, quote, "That's not who I am." Local restaurant Fernando's has announced that they have since terminated their relationship with KFAB. Mitch Tempest, the owner of Fernando's, told me that they cannot support Baker's viewpoint and it does not reflect the values of their business. Reporting in Omaha, Alyssa Curtis, 3 News Now.
Well, the race to replace Governor Pete Ricketts is starting to take shape. 3 News Now investigator Aaron Sanderford spoke with the newest candidate and with the man in the office now.
Nebraska's Republican race for governor got a second candidate on Monday. Charles Herbster, who runs agribusinesses in several states, joined the race by playing his trump card. And today, his well-known pollster helped his campaign draw a crowd.
I know a little bit about successful businessmen, political outsiders, who really do not need this crap and run for all the right reasons. Charles does not need this job. You need him to have this job so you can keep your jobs.
Herbster highlighted his ties to former President Donald Trump. He was a top agricultural advisor for the president's 2020 campaign. He also was a VIP at a January 6th rally Trump spoke at in Washington, D.C., just before the Capitol riots.
You're going to run for governor? You got to take your Trump plates off. I said, because this is how loyal I am to the 45th President of the United States, okay? I said, listen, if it's the difference between being disloyal to President Donald J. Trump or becoming governor of Nebraska, I will not be disloyal to the 45th President of the United States of America.
State Democratic Party leaders say Nebraskans want someone loyal to them, not Donald Trump. Nebraska political observers, though, say Herbster is carving out a populist lane in a GOP primary that often decides who becomes governor. We talked to a supporter who said he likes both Trump and Herbster.
You know, we are really missing real conservative who are going to espouse real conservative issues so we can lift up our country and get out of all the chaos that's going across in other states.
On Monday, Herbster laid out themes for his campaign, including tax reform, conservative leadership at the state level, and fighting federal overreach. He leaned on his record as a businessman, but across town, Governor Pete Ricketts said that might spur some questions.
As governor of Nebraska, I have worked on growing the state by getting companies to move here. I think Charles Herbster is going to have a hard time convincing the people of Nebraska he should be governor when he moved the main company headquarters for his organization and put that in Missouri.
3 News Now spoke to an undecided voter who is choosing between Herbster and University of Nebraska Regent Jim Pillen, a former Husker.
Somebody that is going to take care of property taxes for sure, number one. And just somebody that's honest. And I want to know somebody's record, whether they're a regent or whether they sell bull sperm.
We've been talking about taxes for a long time in Nebraska, but here's what I really believe. I believe we're at a point where people in the past maybe weren't willing to look at everything and restructure the entire thing, and I think we're really, really close to being there.
We asked Herbster what he thought about the presidential election results after he appeared to acknowledge Joe Biden's win.
There's no way we can really know that because none of the states would look at those irregularities. I can only say this, as an individual who watched elections all of my life, it's very difficult personally for me to believe that Joe Biden got over 80 million votes.
Aaron Sandiford, 3 News Now.
Today, Omaha police released video from a traffic stop that ended with a man dying. Yesterday, we told you what we saw, but tonight you can see it for yourselves. Before we do that, we want to warn you that it is graphic and it may be disturbing to some. 3 News Now investigator Aaron Sandiford takes us through the footage.
What you're about to see is police video from November 19th of last year. It starts with a stop near 27th and Harrison Streets, where police say they saw a car stopped in the middle of the road. We'll begin with real-time video from the shooting officer's body camera.
He's reaching. Hey, stop reaching! Hands up! Everybody hands up now! Hey, hands up! Hands! Right here, this guy right here.
I got my gun right on your face.
Hands!
Put your hands up now!
Hands! Hand!
Open the door.
Hand up!
Open the door! Open the door! Open the door now!
Unlock it now. Hand up! He's digging.
Open
Hands!
the door!
Hands!
Stop reaching!
Stop reaching right now! Hands up! I don't give a He's not listening!
Why aren't you listening? Open the door!
Hand! Watch his hands! Watch his hands!
Get out of the vehicle! Get out of the vehicle! Keep your hands where I can see them! What are you doing, man? You are not
Watch his right hand! Watch his right hand! Watch his right hand! Put your hands behind your back! He's digging! He's digging! He's got a gun! He's got a gun! He's got a gun! 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 Gun!
Stop!
Reach! Hands! Hands! Hands!
We're stopping the video here because Jones is about to be shot 4 times, and officers cannot revive him. It took us several viewings to see what officers said justified the shooting. Let's go back to the beginning. The officers spotlight the car and see Jones reaching for something in the back seat. Both officers say to stop reaching and order the car's occupants to put up their hands.
Hey! Hands up! Hands!
You can see Jones is the only person with his hands down. Law enforcement experts say this decision not to listen makes Jones the target of officers' attention. Jones also refuses repeated orders to open the door.
Open the door! Open the door! Open the door! Open the door now!
Unlock it now!
Officer Richard Martier eventually uses his flashlight to break the window and pulls Jones from the car.
Why aren't you listening? Open the door! Show me your hands!
You can listen as Officer Daniel Faulkner says he feels a gun near Jones' waist and Jones' hand near the trigger.
Watch his right hand! Watch his right hand! Watch his right hand! Put your hands behind your back! He's digging! He's digging! He's got a gun! He's got a gun!
This is when Jones and Martier struggle. You can see Jones' hand near his waist. He is shot and they find the weapon when they turn him over.
Watch Watch out.
Gun.
The grand jury that met in March chose not to indict either officer. Jones' family has not yet returned messages seeking comment. Aaron Sandiford, 3 News Now.
Police say they released the video publicly today because it was no longer part of an active investigation. 3 News Now had also made a formal public records request. You can see the videos in more detail, plus more about what happened after it on 3newsnow.com. And again, we want to remind you before you check it out, keep in mind the videos are graphic and may make some viewers uncomfortable. For weeks, we have been investigating a local daycare.
Now, after a first report on Rosewood Academy, police charged 3 people with child abuse, and now the daycare is closed until further notice.
We talked to a mother whose child was injured while attending that daycare. She says she just wants to know what happened and says state officials are not helping.
I don't know what more I could have done differently.
Mandy Everett thought she did everything she could to keep her child safe. Before the pandemic, she made unannounced visits and talked to the teachers. She knew the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services was responsible for inspecting and licensing daycares, so she regularly checked their website as well.
I watched that like a hawk.
But none of the online inspections at the Northwest location of Rosewood Academy showed any substantiated claims involving child abuse. The one item that was substantiated involved children being left alone outside. When that happened, DHHS filed a corrective action status, which needed to be posted in a prominent location at the daycare facility. According to licensing requirements, any applicable status or amendment should be prominently posted and clearly visible in the child care area. Mandy and other parents we spoke to say they never saw it.
I haven't been allowed inside my daughter's daycare since essentially the beginning of COVID for obvious reasons.
Then in March, a COVID outbreak happened at the facility. Mandy's daughter tested positive, and parents started talking about other issues they believed were happening at the daycare's 3 locations involving employees and one of the owners, Carl Hansen.
It's terrifying.
We found an interim licensing agreement that was signed in February between the owners and DHHS, stating Carl Hansen was not allowed to be alone with childcare children until an investigation was complete. This agreement was also supposed to be prominently posted, but this time it said it should be clearly visible to parents. Again, Mandy and other parents say they never saw it.
From a communication perspective, that element just was missing this entire time.
On April 8th, Carl Hansen and 2 former employees were charged with child abuse by neglect, no serious injury. 1 day later, Nebraska DHHS issued an emergency order closing all 3 locations until an investigation was complete. This order stated an emergency existed that required immediate action to protect the physical well-being and safety of the children. The order also sealed all evidence related to this matter.
It makes me feel like a failure as a mom to know that I'm putting my child in this situation, that this could be happening.
Mandy can't help but think about what happened shortly after her daughter started attending Rosewood.
I just immediately went back to the 3 different variations of the story I received with her broken arm and said, no, I don't feel safe.
On August 29th, 2019, Mandy's 2-year-old, Henley, broke her arm in 2 places. The teacher, facility director, and Henley all said she fell from a slide, but Mandy says they all had different versions on how she fell.
At this point, I really just want to understand what's the official record of, how this incident went down.
Mandy asked DHHS for a copy of this report. The department said when a child is injured and they do not see any evidence of a licensing violation, the information is forwarded to their Lincoln office for statistical purposes and filed away. They said under Nebraska DHHS regulations, they cannot release internal department correspondence, notes, and investigation reports.
What hasn't surfaced yet, or what reports are still active or ongoing that we just don't know about?
Mandy's mother-in-law now watches her 2 kids, but Mandy still has unanswered questions, including if she could have done more.
You're trying so hard to make the best decision for your children, and it's unfortunate that even when you try to do everything, something can still slip through the cracks. It doesn't make you feel good.
A hearing on the emergency order was scheduled for last Friday. Rosewood withdrew its request for a hearing, and that means the order will remain in effect until DHHS's investigation is complete. For more on this story and to see all of our reports on Rosewood Academy, just visit our website, 3newsnow.com. And if you have a story idea, email it to investigate@3newsnow.com.
A shoplifting investigation from December of 2019 has now turned into a federal civil rights lawsuit. According to the ACLU, Jason Storrs was picking up his partner from work when he was pulled over after seeing Papillion police cruisers along Highway 370. They say police were looking for shoplifting suspects, either 4 black women or a black man and a black woman. Storrs and his partner did not meet the description according to ACLU, Storrs being a black man with a passenger in his car who was a white female.
Our clients committed no crime. They were simply driving home, and the police had absolutely no justification at all to traumatize our clients and injure them as well.
The ACLU says Storrs was tased and his partner was tackled after getting out of the car. Storrs' partner ended up in the hospital. The ACLU intends on making things right by filing a federal civil rights lawsuit.
You know, by ordering this couple out of the car, tackling, tasing them, like that is certainly no way to build community trust in police, and that's why we're committed to making things right for our client.
Papillion police say Storrs' car matched the description of the suspect's vehicle, that they did use force and ultimately released Storrs and his partner. They also launched an internal investigation in which they say the results of this investigation indicated that no criminal activity occurred on the part of Papillion police officers and no department policies were violated. The results of the external criminal investigation were forwarded to the Sarpy County Attorney's Office for review, which concluded the use of force was justified. The dispute will now be settled in the courts. John Kipper, 3 News Now.
We have a warning to the thousands of Nebraskans addicted to pain pills and a heads up for the people who love them.
An opioid hidden in look-alike drugs is driving an increase in accidental overdoses.
3 News Now investigator Aaron Sandiford explores the fake pills that kill.
Today in Omaha, people who abuse pain pills woke up with one thought: how will I get my next fix? But for many, the search for black market pills will end in overdose. The reason? Many of those pills that look just like prescription drugs are filled with something far more deadly: fentanyl. Drug dealers are mixing in this synthetic opioid that started in operating rooms. Dr. Kenneth Zuha trains the next generation of addiction specialists at the University of Nebraska Medical Center.
The fentanyl is the worst. I mean, that's the one that can end up killing somebody. And so if they don't know that there's fentanyl in the medication they're taking, and they take what they think is going to be enough to get the euphoric effect that they're looking for, they end up accidentally overdosing.
Local drug treatment providers say they worry for addicts. Shelley Barker is a recovering opioid abuser who used for more than 20 years, starting when she was 13. Now she counsels other users through the worst of their withdrawal symptoms.
What goes through my mind is they're lucky to be alive. There's so much out there laced with fentanyl right now that it's you don't know what you're getting. And anybody who's using right now, they're lucky to make it into treatment or to get help.
Recovering from her own opioid addiction was brutal and continues. She abused prescription pills, but says fentanyl is even more addictive.
The intensity of the numbing, the intensity of the lack of feelings, the intensity of being taken away from all your problems and all your feelings.
Barker's boss, Tiffany Gormley, directs the short-term residential treatment unit at Centerpoint's Campus for Hope, where people live for a while to fight their addiction. She says they are seeing the costs of fentanyl, including what happens when people mix it with meth and other drugs.
I've seen difficulty in our individuals just being able to make that commitment to recovery. It seems like there is a new barrier to them being successful.
It's also more dangerous for addicts who relapse.
The scariest thing is when you leave treatment, and if you do make a choice to use again, many people go back to that same amount that they were using and they die.
Users have no easy way to tell if a pill they bought on the street has fentanyl in it. Law enforcement has test strips that can. Experts say the drug is sneaking into almost all of the OxyContin pills sold illegally. It's also getting into bar and club drugs like Xanax. That's part of why local first responders are seeing a spike in unintentional overdoses. Omaha Fire and Rescue says unintentional overdoses climbed from 42 in 2016 to 97 in 2020. Wendy Brown oversees the C shift of paramedics for Omaha Fire. She says her crews are learning from the addicts they revive.
The people, after we get them woke up with Narcan and stuff, will say they thought they were just doing a line of cocaine, or they thought they were just taking, this pill, and then turns out, instantly they're pretty much unresponsive.
Officials say overdose deaths haven't climbed as quickly because first responders are reviving people with nasal sprays or injectables that they've been trained to carry. Douglas County Attorney Don Klein now says his coroner's office is digging into stats on overdose deaths. They've already seen enough to say fentanyl-related deaths appear to be on the rise. This month, Klein said 3 of the last 4 people who died locally of overdoses had fentanyl in their system.
That would show you a lethal dose if you can just look how small it is.
Justin King, the Drug Enforcement Agency's special agent in charge of the Upper Midwest, says his agents are seeing fentanyl mixed in with everything from heroin to oxy.
We see these pockets that will develop and stuff, and it could be on a college campus, it could be in a high school, it could be some people working out in farmland.
If you took one of those, you would probably die.
Narcotics investigators like Sergeant Dave Bianchi and Lieutenant Eric Kaufman say many addicts are learning the dangers of laced pills and using them anyway.
If you're not in the opioid community and it's your first time, that's where we're running into people that are overdosing because they think they are buying a 30 milligram OxyContin, just to party with at the bar or to party with friends.
This is not your father's opiate. Unless you know the source of where your product is coming from, you cannot be entirely sure of what is in it.
Bianchi says people who know or care about an addict need to learn more about Nebraska's Good Samaritan law. It protects people from being arrested for drugs when calling 911 for someone suffering an overdose. He also urges people to learn more about the legal drug Narcan, which is readily available at most local pharmacies. It revives people from overdoses. Zuha from UNMC says people who want to quit can start by calling their doctor. Most will refer them to counseling and other help, including prescribed drugs that can help wean them off of opioids.
This is a disease. This is not a choice that people are making. We need to treat them with empathy and compassion, just like we treat folks who have cancer or diabetes.
Aaron Sandiford, 3 News Now.
For more on this story, including the full interview with Shelley Barker, just go to our website, 3 News Now. And if you have a story idea for an investigative team, email us at investigate@3newsnow.com.
COVID-19 has been in the forefront for over a year now, and it can be easy to forget that other health issues are still very much prevalent. Now, the CDC found that STD rates have hit yet another record high in 2019, and Douglas County is above the national average. 3 News Now reporter Ruda Sinaida joined us live in the newsroom to break down this alarming data. Hey, Ruda.
Good evening, Maya. The data is startling. A 30% increase in STDs from 2015 to 2019, making 2019 the 6th consecutive year that STD rates have reached an all-time high. On top of that, we reported months ago that STD clinics had to close their doors to focus on vaccination efforts, leaving the community worried about where that will leave us after the pandemic. It's an issue not many are comfortable talking about, but an issue that needs to be addressed. Sexually transmitted diseases are at an all-time high nationally for the 6th year in a row. CDC released new data that shows not only are STD rates skyrocketing, but there are serious discrepancies in the communities experiencing that spike. For example, in 2019, STD rates for Black people were 5 to 8 times higher than those that are white.
It's sad, I feel like we're not doing our job properly educating the community. Awareness is the number one to alleviate some of this issue.
Dr. Sammy Zenadine with CHI Health not only has seen higher rates of STDs at his clinic, but all throughout Douglas County.
Douglas County has historically had one of the highest STD rates in the country.
Looking at chlamydia rates alone, Douglas County fares worse than both Nebraska and the national average.
So we aren't necessarily the worst, but it's not great.
And I think part of that is just because we have such an increased testing amount here.
Douglas County Health STD Prevention and Control Supervisor Leah Kazanove says thanks to multiple community efforts, the county is testing at a much higher rate than the rest of the state, hence those higher numbers. But now the Douglas County STD Clinic isn't testing at all. It has been closed for the last 4 months so staff can be utilized to help with the COVID-19 vaccination effort.
I'm glad we have such good connections with our community partners because they've been kind of picking up the slack when we haven't been able to.
Planned Parenthood in Omaha has stepped up to test and treat individuals during the pandemic.
Our Omaha clinic specifically, we've actually been seeing higher than average testing numbers.
Andy says that is good news. If people don't get tested, more spread occurs, especially when many STDs don't have any symptoms. She says regular checkups are what's going to prevent a health crisis within a health crisis.
Are we going to be having another epidemic when we come back? I mean, like we essentially moved from this one to an STD one.
Health officials say they expect to see similar numbers in 2020, despite some clinic closures.
Yeah, and Ruta, that data is very interesting. And I know you mentioned that Black people had up to 8 times the STD rates than white individuals in 2019. What about other groups of people?
Well, Maya, the data shows that the STD burden is unequal in different groups of people. For example, American Indians and other Pacific Islanders had 3 to 5 times the rates of white individuals, and the Latino population had 1 to 2 times the rate of white individuals.
Yeah, those are some real discrepancies there. Did the medical experts offer an insight as to why this is?
I talked to multiple health officials and they blame it on lack of resources, lack of education, and lack of access to health care. It's a problem they say they're working on to help overcome, especially with new efforts like at-home STD testing that people can simply just send back for free. They hope that picks up in popularity if people aren't comfortable going into the office.
Now, is there any word on when the Douglas County STD clinic will open back up?
Unfortunately, they don't think that clinic will open up until late summer because it is expected that more of the younger population will soon be able to get vaccinated for COVID-19, and they'll need all hands on deck for that. Fortunately, Planned Parenthood, as well as Charles Drew and One World Community Health, are still open for STD testing at low cost, so you can get some of those services there.
All right, good information there. Thank you, Ruta. Now, for more on this in-depth look at high STD rates in our area and more resources, visit our website, 3newsnow.com. There you can read more about the data and what local health officials are saying.